My name is Ezekiel, I should mention. Some people here don't know me. Thank you so much for coming, even though you don't. This is the Strategy Factory Introductory Class. Usually, we only do this class virtually. So this time around, we decided we're going to do this class in person because we wanted to see what the experience is like. So what we do is that we take the Strategy Factory is a 10-hour class. It happens at a hotel just across the street, across the road here. But what we do is that we take the first module, the very first module of the class, and we give it out for free. And then after that, those that decide that they want to attend the class itself can decide that, I mean, most people would probably, move on, and it's fine. But after this module, the idea of this first module is for you to sort of get something that can get you to start, to scale your business, build your business, and the likes, right? So, quick one, like I said, my name is Ezekiel. I run this company called Limbsimple. It's an acronym that means Life, Investing, Money, and Business Made Simple. And we, in the last almost 10 years, have run a business academy where we essentially, put together a couple of business trainings and the likes. And last year, I joined the Forbes Coaches Council. And Forbes Coaches Council is one of the most elite group of business coaches in the country. And at the time that I joined the Forbes Coaches, I should mention that there were only 3 other Nigerians there, people that are way bigger names, Feladro Toye, Lana Lushola, I think Sam Adeyemi and myself. Yes, so I mean, for me, it's and it's also a good pleasure to also still be. I've been sent my badges for 2023. I'm also still in the Forbes Coaches Council. And more important to this conversation, I think, is the fact that as a business, over the last decade or so, we've worked with quite a number of entrepreneurs through different events, whether it's the EDC that we do at Transcorp Hilton in Abuja or the events that we've done in Lagos. And I've personally coached a couple of entrepreneurs, 37 of whom now do over $1 billion a year in revenue. In fact, at the moment, our biggest clientele closed last year at 100 billion. But of course, some people just, crossed into $1 billion. Some people did 720 million and the like. So I like to think that I know a thing or two about how a business can make money. And I'm hoping that at the end of this session, you probably would learn a couple of things for yourself. But usually, next slide, I usually like to start all of my classes with asking this question. See, what happens is, why I ask this question? How many of us like this, Amala? So I usually ask this question. And the reason is because whenever you ask people this question, oftentimes their response is different. We always respond with what we think we can get. You see, when you're young, you're 15, 16, 12, and they ask you this question, you would answer with what you really want. So if you ask a young chap when he's 12, 13, what do you really want? He'll say he wants a Maserati, right? Or a Bugatti. How many of us like that kind of car? Bugatti, Maserati. Raise up your hand, oh, God is still here. Exactly. So, and people say that kind of thing. I want a Bugatti, I want a Maserati, and all that is nice. And so you give the child a good advice, go to school, work hard, be great at school, and then this guy goes, does all these things and is, very successful. He's in his third job, he's earning $2 million a month. And so he goes online to check, now he wants to check that Bugatti out, right? So he goes online, checks how much the Bugatti is. It's about $3.2 million. It doesn't ring a bell until he converts it to Naira. And so he gets a good idea that the purpose of a car is taking from point A to B. So a Toyota is not bad. So what happens is that we start to downgrade our dreams from what we want to what we think we can get. And we do that because we make a small mistake. And the mistake that we make is that we think that life adds, whereas life compounds. Right? So the simple illustration is, there's a good book called The Compound Effect. And then Harry gave this illustration that if I gave you, for example, this is political season, right? So there's Ghana must goes moving around. Good. So imagine if I come to your house and say, maybe, you can influence votes in my favor. And so I give you, on one hand, $5 million in cash. On the other hand, I say, look, I have one coin, right? Coin. And it's a magic coin. It has the ability to double itself. But it would only double itself and whatever it is that is made every day for just 30 days. Once every day for 30 days. Right? So on one hand, I had $5 million in cash. On the other hand, I had this magic coin. Which of them would you take? Right? You take the cash, right? I mean, who do magic? Exactly. But the point is this. if you took that magic coin, if you took that cash, you would have shortchanged yourself of more than $5.2 million. Because in 30 days, that coin would have become $10.2 million. And you would have five. And you know the funny thing is that the magic doesn't happen until the 20th day. The magic doesn't even happen until the 20th day. And so what it means is that if you keep your eyes focused on what you want, right, over time, you most likely would hit the number. I mean, I have a client that was homeless between 2009 and 2012, squatted with 13 families, but closed last year at 80 billion. Yes. Started the business in 2012, built it. By 2015, they had done a little less than $1 billion. By 2017, they had done more than 2.5 billion. By 2018, they had crossed 15 billion there. Things like, how do you plot that graph from, homeless, 13, squatting with 13 families, all the way to 80 billion a year? You don't. You just keep building. So the first thing I want to do with this class is try and remind us of some of the things that we truly want, right? So my next slide. It's very important that you remember. So when I talk about what you truly want, I like to just, most of us here want financial freedom, isn't it? If you want it, just raise up your hand. We all want financial freedom. And somehow, some way, we all know what financial freedom is. Even if we can, some of us can calculate it, right? You know what financial freedom is? Let me give you a perfect example. Imagine that you're newly married, right? Newly married, and both you and your wife probably work in Lekki Phase 1, right? You work in Lekki Phase 1, you're newly married, or let's say you work in Chevron, beautiful. You work in Chevron, you're newly married, and you both live in Magodo, for example. Now, because you're newly married, there's no kids at home, anywhere you end up is home, right? So it's the first Friday of the month, and you're in traffic. You're in one of these really bad Lekki traffics. Really, really bad one, right? Now your wife is getting angry because at 11:30, you're still somewhere around Agungi. And she knows you're going to hit that, you're going to go past that traffic, go past, Third Mainland Bridge, and eventually make it to Magodo and still have to deal with, what's happening with Redemption Camp and all of that to get to Magodo. And this crazy man is going to forget that they both entered the house together and will ask for food. How many of us understand what that? So she's getting all angry, but she doesn't know what this man has planned, right? So this man is thinking that, okay, instead of doing that kind of thing, let me shock this madam, right? So he's thinking that, okay, by the time we get to, Ozumba, right, instead of just going straight towards Falemo Bridge, he'll just cut at that roundabout, pass through 1004, go through this roundabout, enter a hotel, and then go to the reception and say, I want your presidential suite. Of course, it's a Friday evening, so instead of just stressing this woman to go home, let's just stay 2 nights here, and on Sunday we'll go home, rest, and go to work on Monday. So he said he wants the presidential suite at the Signature. And then they say that per night is 550,000. So he said, no problem. So, he pays, and he looks at his wife and saying, honey, don't worry, just order anything, we are good. It's on me this weekend. How many of us wives would like your husbands to do that? Good. How many of us husbands would love to do that? Exactly. But the problem, the big problem, this is where the problem starts. The daydreaming is going on very well until it hits the point where it was going to cost him 1.1 million. Because his entire house rent is 800K. So he's thinking that that's like a whole house rent too. So he comes up with a better idea. He said, honey, don't worry, just call that gala there, let's eat gala. We don't have to eat when we get home. The ability to make the Eco Hotel decision versus the gala decision is what financial freedom is. Right? Exactly. Some people want to make a lot of money because they want to contribute to society. And giving is not just beautiful, you can't explain how you feel when you give, you just have to experience it. But it's easier to give when you have, isn't it? Right? It's only when the ends have met, or when the ends have overlapped. Because most people are trying to make ends meet. I don't know if you understand the illustration. Ends, when you're trying to make ends meet, it's difficult to be generous. Some people want to make a lot of money because they want peace of mind. They don't want to change the world. They just want to know that no matter what happens, for example, most of us, those of us that would come to the Strategy Factory, we do like a company, a national analysis of Nigeria to see exactly what's happening. For example, many of us here are clamoring for the removal of fuel subsidy. And it's a good thing. But you need to realize, a lot of Nigerians are not prepared for it? Why not? Because if subsidy it goes out, let me explain what would happen. At the very minimum, we would buy fuel at about 800 naira a liter. At the very minimum. Probably more like 900, and immediately fuel goes to 800, that would be 7x its current price. And what that means is that our entire life is about to go 7x. Because that fuel is the base of everything, isn't it? It's the base of everything. So immediately, everything goes up. Your house rent goes up, your car bill goes up. You want to buy a car, better buy it now before June. Anything, right? So peace of mind is going to take a whole new definition from June. Because in the current budget, subsidy is going to be paid up until June 12, right? Some people want to make a lot of money because they want good health. How many of us know good health is not cheap? It's true because, see, I'm driving one day, right? And this fitness guy on Inspiration FM is saying, for you to be healthy, you need to keep your food intake between 1,800 to 2,200 calories per day. You know, as I'm listening to it, I'm laughing in the car because you need to have a shitload of money to know how to calculate. How many of us here know the calories inside the food we had this morning? Because in this country, you eat until your stomach tells you to stop or your pocket tells you to stop. See, one of them is worse than the other. It's rather than your stomach tells you, but most of us can't afford to calculate calories. Because to calculate calories, you need to employ a chef. I didn't say cook. Because chefs are not cooks. Chef is the one that the money you're paying him is 10 times the money that he's using to buy the food. And he wears fine clothes, fine hats, you know. Because there's chef, then there's cook. Then there's something called, for those that understand, there's something called alasse underneath that. Then under that one, there's now olokpo at the very base. So it depends on the one that you can afford, right? And the other thing is that you need to exercise. I remember I used to live in an estate in Magodo, and every time I'm going to the office, I would go drop my kids, and then my children are in jail. I would see some people, this is 7:30, I'm going to the office, I'm trying to get my kids to school. I see some people jogging. And you know, in my mind, I'm like, that had so much profound impact on me that I don't go to the office on Mondays. I had to reorganize my life. On Mondays, I don't go to the office, because I work all the way to Sundays, so my staff will be in the office, but I don't go to the office. Why? Because I'm driving that time, seeing this guy jogging at 7:30, I'm like, what are these people doing? For you to be jogging at this time, that means working at 8 o'clock is not your plan. This was pre-COVID though, so we're not talking about virtual work. We're talking about someone that is jogging at 7:30, that you are trying to hustle to get to work. At 7:30, you know he's not trying to get to work by 8. And if he's getting to work by 8, not only does he run his own business, he's making money. You know? So the way that guy those people used to confuse me, now confuse people now. So on Monday mornings, which will now be jogging. So somebody is looking at me, is confused. Exactly. That's the point. Right? So we want to make a lot of money because they want to build assets. And building assets is very, 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 very important. In fact, I have some of my people here. I used to have one of my mentors, business partners. Our office used to be in Idowu Taylor. It's a 14-story building, two office complex on each floor. I remember I used to tell her that, see, the owner, because each of the office complex was about 14 million naira at the time. So I used to tell her that the owner of this building can afford to die, even if he has 11 children. Because he has left them 28 million each every month, every year. That's why you hear things like, Papa was a very good man. He taught us many things. He didn't teach them nothing. He left them, when you leave money to your children, they will understand everything you have been teaching them. If you don't leave them money, they won't understand everything you've been teaching them. Right? Because think about it. You want to have assets enough, because at some point in our lives, we're probably not going to be allowed to work as hard, or not going to be able to work as hard. You know, some people want to make a lot of money because they want to go to send their kids to good schools. And good schools is important. In fact, I tell people here, if you're here and you have children, and even if it means, and you might not agree with me, but hear what I'm about to say. Even if it means living your life at a lower standard, do that and put your children in the best school possible. Why? Because 20 years from now, it would matter who their classmates were than it would matter what they studied. I was in Abuja one time, I was in Transcorp, And, I can't remember where I was, but some people were having this argument about school. I mean, they all lived in Abuja, and they were angry, saying all these schools are too expensive. So one lady was not like, it's not the same thing they're teaching them. I'm going to take my child to that school in Lewi. Usually, I don't always talk on things that don't concern me. But the problem is that they're about to determine the future of somebody that is not in the room. Because when they say, take that to Lewi, they say, yes, we should all do that, in fact. So I said, yes, excuse me, please. I know that this thing doesn't concern me. Okay, yeah, I was in IRIC office. We're buying tickets to fly back to Lagos. I said, I know this doesn't concern me, but please don't take that child to Lewi. He said, what do you mean? I said, please. Because in 20 years, in 10 years, in 30 years, it would matter who his classmates were than it would matter whether he was even brilliant. Whether your child will be brilliant or not is not important in 20 years. It would matter who his classmates were. That would be more important than whether he's brilliant. So if you can afford it, and even if you can't, live a lesser, sacrifice your own comfort. Both of you and your husband should share one car instead of buying two. And put your kids in the best school possible. Why? Because you're providing them with the opportunity, and it's not just about who they would meet. It's about the ability for them to dream. And I say that because I'm a witness of that. My parents, I went to a private school. And I went to a private school, my parents were squatting. So we didn't have a place to stay. But my dad had a piece of land. Now it was good for me because I'd been in business, and because I knew that there was no more school fees coming, I got into business. I started business. I was able to pay my school fees 200, 300, and 400 level of private school, which was good. But he sold a piece of land that he had and sent I and my brother to that school. I got into the school, and some people had pocket money. This was like 15, 16. People had pocket money of $500,000 naira. Pocket money, like money that they were just going to spend. So I remember one day I was talking to a guy that I attended last year. At the time, I was just talking to him about, how that I'd paid my fees myself. He said, that's nice. I said, oh, yeah, it's private school. I said, 400. He said, He said his school fees was 15,000. And it took him 9 months to gather it, to be able to pay it. I said, the problem is that the people around you, there are not a lot of opportunities around you. Put your kids in the best schools, please. It's not just about, and of course, right now, a lot of the friends that I've done business with, a lot of people that I've done business with are people from my school. One of the first big clients that I got, their business did maybe 8-point-something billion naira last year. Is a friend from my school, runs a solar energy business. Who's going to trust you to start to work with their staff? Aside somebody that's known you. Right? So do it. I'm telling you, it pays off now. We didn't have a house. I'm telling you, we were squatting in a place where my dad made that decision. Right? And he explained to me, he said, it's important that we do this because it matters the kind of company that you have. It has a profound impact on how you think. And some people want to make a lot of money because they want to retire in style. And retirement in style is very, 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 very important. I do a lot of trainings in banks, and so I talk to people about that. And most people, what I see is that they relegate that importance to maybe a pension fund or something that would, work that out for them. And it's good to have one, but it's important to know what you are getting. Right? So let me do this experiment. Imagine that you have a job that pays you enough for you to be able to put aside 50,000 every month to your retirement account, to your pension fund, right? Now, if you're here, you have a civil service job, or you had a job, you know that that's a decent job, right? Because your pension fund is about 7.5%, right? 7.5% of your income is what goes to your pension fund. So 50,000 every month would be about 600,000 a year, isn't it? Great. Let's assume that person could work that job for 20 more years. And he got 10% guaranteed interest on his contribution. Now, it's usually less than that, but let's assume you get 10% guaranteed interest. Over 20 years, 10% guaranteed interest, and if we tag in something beautiful called compounding interest, it's called the eighth wonder of the world. Compounding interest, when that person retires, that person would have about 32.2 million naira in their retirement account, which is great, isn't it? Yes or no? Yes. There's nobody in this room that would walk past an opportunity to have 32.2 million in their retirement account. Try it, right? Exactly. But that's where the problem is. Robert Kiyosaki says that there are 3 sides to every story. There's a side that you're told. There's a side you believe. And then there's the truth. Who wants to hear the truth now? The truth is that you will get, all things being equal, you will get that 32.2 million. The question that you haven't asked, and they are betting their entire lives that you wouldn't ask that question, is what would 32 million naira be worth in 20 years? Because there's a way to calculate it. There's a way to calculate it. So what's happening is they are selling us tomorrow on today's excitement. It's exciting today to have 32 million. How exciting would it be in 20 years? So let me show you how exciting it will be in 20 years. To understand how exciting it will be in 20 years, we need to go back to a previous year. Let's go back to a year like 1985. In 1985, some of us here are old enough to know, if my dad had 3,500 naira, 1985, he could buy a brand new car. True of us. Of course, not the Maserati, of course. Maybe B2, but brand new, not this one that everybody say, yeah, I have a brand new, a tear rubber car. You know, tear rubber car doesn't mean brand new now. Because they're putting rubber on top of Tokumbo car now. And people are tearing it. Exactly. So, and by the way, just so that you know, 1985, 3,500 was not back pocket change. It was some people's annual salary. It's a lot of money. It wasn't like you go and visit your uncle, you're going home, and I give you 3,500 for transport. Even if your uncle was Dangote at that time, still not give you. Right? Good. So my dad has this money, he's going to buy a car. His friend says, no, you know what? That car can spoil. Why don't you put that money in a retirement account, and you find a way to save that money every single year? Do you know what will happen in 20 years? So he takes that advice, right? Every year, he'll put that money together, he'll save it, he'll get 10% guaranteed interest, he gets 20 years of savings, he gets compounded. The same factor that produced that 32 million naira, right? When he's done, he would have 246,600. Now, it's a lot of money coming from 3.5, but he'll get that money in 2005. 2005, 248,600, 2005. Would I buy me a brand new car? Would I buy me a fairly used car? It won't even buy me a useless car. And here's the key. Because what's happening is that money is losing value faster than it is gaining numbers. That's the reason why just saving money makes no sense. And so I tell people that it is better to save up for an investment than to save up as an investment. Save your money, buy land. Save your money, start a business. Save your money, do something. If the entire strategy is saving money, you're going to get to the end of the road and realize that you've gotten something that is added in numbers, but has drastically reduced in value. Right? Very, very critical. So when you figure out that you want any of these things, because oftentimes when people figure out all of this, they start a business, right? And when they start a business, they come to the Strategy Factory. And so one of the first things that we do in the very first module, next slide of the Strategy Factory, is that we ask ourselves the all-important question, what is a business? So a lot of us, we sort of have an idea of what a business is, but I want to bring a definition of business to you that I think is going to help change or correct or revamp how we run our businesses, right? So one of the best definitions I've found is from this book, and that's why I decided to put it up here. If you leave this place, go and look for this book, buy it, Google, whatever it is. The name of the book is called The Personal MBA. It's by a guy, don't just see it, sir, read it. I read this book, so I have an audio book of this. I listen to it on the average once every month, at worst once every quarter. If you get this book, you'll be fine. So this book gives a 5-step definition to what a business. Number one, it said a business is a repeatable process. And repeatable is very key. That 1, creates and delivers something of value. 2, that other people want or need. 3, at a price that they are willing to pay. 4, in a way that satisfies the customer's needs and expectations. And then 5, so that the business brings in enough profit to make it worthwhile for the owners to continue operation. This definition is beautiful. This is the best definition of a business that I have seen. And so I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes essentially helping you understand business from this 5-step definition. So the first question, remember that the first definition says it creates and delivers something of value. So in that, the question that we all have to start to ask is, what is the value of what I'm bringing to market? Plus, my next slide, yeah. So in that, we need to consider whether this idea that we're running or this business that we have is viable in the first place, right? And then there are 4 ways to ascertain, 4 ways that I'm going to share. A lot more than that, but I'm just going to share 4 ways to ascertain whether the business that you're in is viable. Because sometimes you're in a business that you should be getting out of, right? Sometimes you should be getting out of a business. You shouldn't be there. You should be on your way out. And we've seen that, and I'm going to be sharing live examples of this with you. Next. So the first question you need to ask is, this business that I'm running, does it serve a huge expanding market? You see, because you can't grow a business bigger than the market that it serves, right? So if you're doing a business, you should ask yourself, is the market size for that business expanding or is it shrinking, right? I'll give you a perfect example. Think about credit, call card, right? The market size for buying credits is shrinking. How many of us here bought airtime from somebody on the road? Most of us here do that transaction from your bank, isn't it? There's a bank app, there's something. Exactly. So anybody who's made a big business out of selling recharge card, what should the person be doing now? The person should be on their way out. The person should be on their way out. It's the reason why you find IBM that essentially started out the personal computer. They're no longer in the personal computer business. Because in another 5 years, in another 10 years, nobody's going to be using computers anymore. In fact, I personally have not used a computer for like 10 years in terms of working. I designed these slides on my iPad. I'm an Apple guy. I designed this on my iPad. I can do it on my phone. I can do it on my wristwatch. I designed this thing on my iPad. I've not had any need. Of course, we have computers in my company, but personally, I've not had any need to use a computer for more than 11 years now. And that's going to be the case. I can literally connect this to this device with HDMI and all that if I wanted to, right? So if you're in the computer business, you need to shift. That's why IBM is out of the computer business. They've gone into software. HP is out. Dell is out. Microsoft is getting themselves out. Microsoft is transforming themselves to become more of a gaming business than a computer business. Why? Because it's a dying industry, right? And the way you know is to ask the demography of Nigeria or the demography of the world, whatever business you want to serve. You need to look at how much people are being born, because when you check how many people are in the country, when they say Nigerians have 85% of 85% of Nigerians are between 18 and 35, that should tell you exactly what type of business you should be doing. Because if 85% of people are in that age bracket, you should be wondering what they're interested in. You should be wondering what their capacity to buy or not buy is. There's a lot of things. And when people come to class, we have a market analysis that we use to show people how that, the age bracket of Nigeria, which is going to stay constant over the next sort of 32 years, is significant. So for example, we show people, for example, in real estate, we show you how that the real estate industry, for example, is sitting on a 450 trillion naira opportunity between now and 2050. So you notice that there are thousands of real estate companies opening, right? Exactly, because the opportunity is huge, and so it's a massively fast-growing business. Massively fast-growing. And there are all of these other industries that are massive, that are in that space. Also, the second point is this, right? Can it be built into a unique product? Because what does that mean? It means, how do I move people from beyond wanting my product category to wanting me? Right? How do I move people from wanting Gary to wanting my brand of Gary, right? How do I move people from wanting a phone to wanting my brand of phone? Because the moment you can build people into wanting something specifically that you offer, then you can charge high, then you can do whatever you want. So you have to build uniqueness into your business. You have to build uniqueness into your business. So the question you need to ask is, what makes us different from everybody else? If there's nothing that makes you different from anybody else, why should people buy from you? Right? So if you have a business and there's no real difference, you should move. The third thing is this: is it in its time? Because there's such a thing as timing in business. Because here's the problem with coming at the wrong time. is that if you get into a business too early, you are saddled with the responsibility of educating the market. And oftentimes, the person who educates the market runs out of money by the time the market gets the memo. So many of us here know Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all these guys. What we might not remember or probably never know is High Five, MySpace. All these guys who labored night and day to get all of us to understand how social networking works. Many of us here have Gmail accounts. What you might forget is AOL. And what some of us might no longer be using is Yahoo, Hotmail. All these guys did a lot of work in preparing us to understand how these things work, and they ran out of money by the time we got the message. Right? So sometimes when you are getting into a market too early, you need to ask yourself if you should. A perfect example of somebody who played this really smart is Glow. Many people don't know, but Glow got his license way before anybody got into the country. But he realized that he didn't want to spend a lot of his money trying to help us understand how telecoms network worked. Right? Because if you do that, you need to have a shitload of money to stay in business. Two guys came into the market, Econet and MTN. Of the two of them, one is alive. The other one we don't know. It has gone through different transformations. We can't even remember where it started. Exactly. So whenever, and it doesn't mean that you should not do the business or you should do the business, but you should count the cost. The next is to figure out whether the way you're building that business would give you leverage. So you have to determine, how do I want to build this business? How do I want to keep going? How do I want to go, going forward? But when you figure out that, that's just point one, which is trying to determine whether you have something that is valuable in the market, right? The second point, next slide please, is to ask whether people want or they need this product that because there's no point creating something that people don't want or people don't need, isn't it? Next slide please. Right? So the question now is, how needed is the offers that you're bringing to the market? How needed? And this is not about whether your product is expensive or cheap. This is about your ability to create the need in people's minds. And one of the reasons why I have the iPad here is that many of us might not have realized this, but have you noticed that almost everyone you know, pretty much everyone you know who uses an Apple product, maybe an iPhone, an iPad, they have a sense in which they behave like they've made it in life. How many of us have noticed that? If you are here and you don't believe that, you are using an iPad, an iPhone. You are using an iPhone, and those that are using iPhones don't know. But those that are not, we know, we see it. There's a way they behave as if they've made it in life, right? Exactly. See that feeling? You see that feeling? That feeling was engineered into their thinking. That feeling is the reason why Apple is the most valuable company in the world. And I would explain it from a psychological and a functional perspective. Have you noticed? So Apple created this ecosystem, right? And then sold us that the best people, the most creative people in the world, for example, use that device. And then they enforced it by a certain partnership with Hollywood. If you notice, if you watch any movie coming out of the US, the good guy or the rich guy is using an iPhone. Have you noticed? The bad guy is not. But the good guy or the rich guy is using an iPhone. And so to then reinforce that, they decided to create a functional strategy. If you've noticed, can I have that for a minute? If you've noticed, Apple products, right, they don't have a significant structural difference to their phones over a 2-year period, sometimes even 3. Now, if you see two people using a Samsung phone produced in the same year, two people using a Samsung phone, they won't feel like equals. Because one of them might be using the S21, the other one might be using the A21, right? They don't feel like, it's the same phone. Very, very slight difference, but they don't feel like equals. If you see two people using any iPhone produced in any 2-year period, they immediately feel like equals. That's why you notice that the 11 Pro has 3 cameras, right? And then, so if somebody is using an 11 Pro Max and you're using a 14 Pro Max, there's not much of a functional aesthetic difference, so we can immediately feel like we belong to the same class. I'll tell you a funny story. Thank you. I used to do this program in Abuja, Transcorp Hilton, every month. And some of these top level people, one of them asked me one day and said if I knew somebody that could build a website. And I had a friend that built a website, but he used to build a website for 25K. And so this big lady is asking me for a website. So I called this my friend. I said, come, you're going to build websites, but don't talk about pricing. I'll help you discuss pricing. So we had a meeting at Salamander Cafe. We'll say 2. It's a cafe there. So I'll tell you what happened at the end of the meeting, and I'll back up to the meeting. So he told me at the end of the meeting, I said the first thing he noticed, this was 2011, was that I walked into the meeting and I was I had an iPad with me, she had an iPad with her, he had a notepad with him. That was the first thing he noticed. So the meeting, we're sitting down in a round table, 3 of us, so we started to talk, and he gave a good account of himself, that he could, essentially get the job done and all that kind of stuff. So this lady now says, it gets to pricing. And you know what happens when somebody doesn't want to pay a lot of money? She says, oh, Ezekiel, I don't know if you can help me talk to your friend. This is a personal project. I don't really have a budget. I don't know if you can understand, blah, blah, blah. All those things that they used to tell when they want to tell you nonsense money. I don't know if I've heard this kind of thing. Once you hear those things, your spirit starts to come down like, hey, this money no go complete. That kind of thing. So this lady is talking about all these things. And this man, I looked at his face, he's already getting despondent, but I knew that he was about to be shocked. Because I understood that her understanding of being broke is very different from his understanding of being broke. So as the lady is going on and on and on, she says, I don't know if you can talk to your friend, if you can take, remember I told you this guy does 25K for this website. He said, I don't know if you can tell your friend if you can, just sort of manage 250,000 for the website. He told me after the meeting that it took God not to shout. And since he couldn't shout, he did the next best thing. He said, oh, you know what? Yeah, we'll manage it. In fact, because you are one of our, you're a first-time client, we'll provide you with 1 year free maintenance, 1 year. As he was really at the free, I had to kick him out of the table and say, Papa, they are begging him in money. They are still giving you everything for free. But they agreed, and then they were going to transfer 150,000 out to him at the beginning, and she wanted to give him the details. He wanted to write his account details down, because she had asked, so she expected that it would have been airdropped to her. So he wrote it down on his notepad and gave it to him. And that was the very first time this lady realizes that he doesn't have an iPad with him. So she said, oh, I can see that you forgot your iPad. That's exactly what she said. And then he looks at her, and then he says, yes, I forgot my iPad. So they finished the meeting, they transferred money to him. Because all this while I lived in Lagos, I would only go to Abuja to my meeting. After that, I said, Ezekiel, where did he say iPad? Because you are going to Lagos now, we will still see next week. He went, spent 8, because don't forget this guy does website for 25K. So he can buy iPad 80,000 and still do 3 websites. Inside that 150K, that 70K that's left, and still collect his balance. But that had a profound impact on me, that somebody would assume that because we were sitting at the same table, we were going to be equal down to the devices that we use. The question is this: the product or service that you offer, do people have that type of a feeling towards it? Do people tell other people that, look, if you want to dry clean your clothes, have you used X? If you haven't, you've not started. Because if you create that, if people feel that way about working with you or working with your business, then you have created cash flow for life. Right? Next. The third factor is at the price they are willing to pay. And you see, this is not so much about whether you are expensive or cheap. Because I don't believe that anything is expensive or cheap. Nothing is expensive, nothing is cheap. What determines that is who's buying, isn't it? Right? So next slide. So the point here is, if you look at this, it's called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? A psychologist called Abraham Maslow has determined that different people exist in different strata of society based on their earning capacity, right? And so usually what I found out is that a lot of business owners engage in wishful thinking. We have a product and we have not asked ourselves, who's the person that can afford this product? I'll give you an example. If I want to eat right now, if I had 300 naira, I can eat a meal, right? I go to one booker somewhere, I'll be somewhere here at this physiological level, I can eat a meal. 300 naira, I eat a decent meal. If I had a little bit more money, say 750 to 950, I can still eat one food, right? One food, up there. If I had a bit more money, 750, I could go to maybe Chicken Republic, right? Refuel my spirit and I move on, right? Good. But if you had like maybe 3,000 to 5,000 naira, you could eat the same one meal. Go to Rhapsodies, Casper and Gambini's, you have a decent meal. Go to Ocean Basket, the same one meal you eat, right? But if you have a little bit more money, maybe somewhere between 20 to 50,000, you can still eat, right? Go to a hotel, go there, get a buffet, buy wine, you would eat. You would have a decent, same one meal. If you had as much as 350,000 thereabout, you can still eat. There's a restaurant, it's not far from here. If you drive like this, like maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes drive from here, an average meal there is about 350K. Oh yeah. I went there one time, I had a meeting with a client. I went there with one of my staff, so we had the meeting. First things first, it's difficult to find the restaurant, even on Google Map. Then you find it, and you get there, your name has to be written in the book of life for you to enter. You can't just enter and say, I want to eat. No, your name has to be in the book of life. You have to have made a reservation. So we get in, we're sitting down, the man, it was one of our clients from Port Harcourt, and he had a meeting with some of his Chinese partners. There were like maybe 15 of them there. So we get there, and I'm like, and my wife had talked about that restaurant before. So I told her, I was communicating with her, babe, I'm in this restaurant. I say, yeah. So we're talking, bring the food exquisite. First thing, so you get the menu. The man said, don't worry, you should just order what you want. I'll pay. Let's just finish. When I finish, I'll come here. We'll have the quick meeting. I'll move on. So I get there, open the menu, no price tag. You know that you're in trouble, right? When you open the menu, there's food and no price. Problem. So first I learned, okay, my brother wants to go chop. Get that thing with chop. So, getting food, order, my staff ordered, we're eating. The food was, when the food is born again. I know when the food is going to heaven. When the Bible says that when we get to heaven, there'll be like a marriage feast. They bring that chef to this place. So the food, everything was doing very well. The dessert, you put your fork inside the chocolate just melts as if, when the Bible says the mountain melts in front, that kind of thing. So I'm just chatting with my wife, telling man. So I was telling my wife, what it is, looks like I should bring you here next week. Because again, I and my wife like to go to different restaurants. And not just because we enjoy it, but because both of us, I can't tell the story, but both of us lost a massive investment sometime in 2011 because of our inability to go out. Yeah, I lost it because of cappuccino coffee. It's funny. But if I get the chance, I'll probably tell you that story. If we finish and you still want to hear it, just remind me, I'll tell you. So we go to these places, right? So I remember I told her that we'll come here next week. Then eventually, they finish and I see bill. Some of us just chop 750K. 7? Yeah, two of us, we shop 750. And I said to her, I said, I'm not the one paying the bill. I said to her, I said, babe, we'll come. I'm just not sure when. Incidentally, about 3 weeks later, about 4 weeks later, she had a meeting with the French embassy. They had it in that same place. And then she had the food there. I said, okay, finally, French embassy has done the work for me. You have eat there, I've eat there. Let's just imagine that both of us are there at the same time. We are eating food, right? Exactly. But the point is, the person who is marketing for that restaurant is not looking for the person who wants to go to Chicken Republic. Right? And the person who has, and guess what? Who you're marketing does not determine whether you be rich or poor. You just have to market the right person. For example, people will say because the person that sells B2, because B2 is cheap means that they're not. No, they're probably, the B2 is more profitable than the Bugatti. In fact, I should shock you, Volkswagen that produces the B2 is the company that has bought over Bugatti, Porsche, Maserati, Lamborghini, McLaren, and Fiat. They own all those brands. Next time you see a Lamborghini beside a B2, that B2 is his uncle. But the point here is not so much about, because some people mistake this and say, oh, it means only talk to high people. No, talk to the people you should be talking to. right? So you should ask, what's my business? What's the product? Who should I be talking to? And, focus all your energy talking to only those people. You can't save the whole world. Somebody came to Jesus and said, no, I've been sent to the lost to Israel. Even Jesus Christ did not say, okay, because I built the whole world, let me go on. No, you focus on your people. Another example that I'll tell you about food. This is pretty much not useful, but it's just funny. In 2019, I went to speak somewhere, and I spoke alongside the MD of an oil and gas firm. So, we hit it off, we got talking, it was a beautiful engagement. And so the guy invites me to his house for lunch. So I go to this man's house. How many of us here have been to the house of somebody that has made it in life? Not someone trying to make it, someone that has made it. You enter that house and you know that if this guy gets to heaven, you won't be surprised. There's some people that when they enter heaven, if they open gates, they wait outside the gate. They won't go to where they wait outside the gate for 25 years so that they can acclimatize to what's going on. They say the street is made of gold. The only gold they had was their wedding ring, and it wasn't really correct gold. But the point is, so I go to this man's house, beautiful place. I get into his house, we're talking, and then they bring me to the dining table. His wife is a chef, and she doesn't have any restaurant. You know how rich you have to be to have your wife have all the qualifications of a chef and no restaurant? Only chefing for you. So this wife cooks us a 6-course meal. I know 3-course, but this is 6-course. Right? And you know that is a big deal because she finished the meal, and then she's wearing her chef attire. He finished the meal, and then she spends 25 minutes explaining. Have you ever eaten food that they explained to you before? If all the food you've ever eaten, you know it, there's a problem. You have to eat the one that they explain to you. That they say, oh, this is a Himalayan mountain salt plus Oshodi. Are combining together. When they explain to you. So this man finishes explaining, and then we start eating. But as we were about to start, the man's neighbor comes in, and what I didn't know was that the man and that his particular neighbor, they're very good friends, but they also share something in common. They go to different places in the world just to eat. Yeah, so they would fly to a restaurant in some part of the world to experience. Some of us need to. When I say somebody has made it in life, you don't know what I'm talking about. I used to have a friend whose boss is a Formula 1 freak. Anywhere Formula 1 is happening, anywhere in the world, he's there. If there's a board meeting, he will do it virtually. He's in that place. First, they can afford to, because those tickets are not cheap, right? But yes, so the man comes in and says, no, very, very sorry, invites the man to eat. So 2 people like to eat, and then there's me. And so the conversation naturally went towards food. So, and that man has a very funny way. Now, see the reason why he follows that man around. That man has a very funny way as to how he talks about food. So you say something like, have you eaten this restaurant, if you taste their crabs, you will know that Jesus Christ truly came to the world. That's how he talks, So we talk about these different restaurants and all that kind of stuff. And some of them I've been to, because remember I lost money a couple of years ago, so my principle is, if anybody calls me today and say, let's have a meeting in X place, when I'm having a meeting with that man, would never be the first time I'm going there. So I'll tell you that story if we have time. So as he's talking about this different, some of them I've been to, then now, so as he noticed I've been to all these restaurants, as a young boy sitting there in all this elderly man, decided he wants to bugger me. So he's talking about a restaurant that he had eaten at in Dubai. Fortunately for me, I'd been to that restaurant before, a couple of years before, and in fact, I had dinner with Dr. Maria actually at that particular restaurant, So I'm talking to some people that I know that know me, exactly, right? So I had dinner with my mentors at that restaurant. So we kept talking. He now mentioned a particular restaurant in France. Incident again, just about 3 weeks to that date, I was in France, so I'd been to that restaurant too. So he said, man, I said, sir, I'm not like you, sir. He said that if I've eaten this one, you will know that I'm at the same level. I said, first, sir, I don't know whether if I've eaten it, but let me just establish the fact that we are not at the same level. So he now said, have you eaten blue tuna before? I said, what's that? He said, I should Google it. He said he ate it in Japan. Blue tuna is a fish. The fish is $3.2 million. Yes, a fish. It's not a fish. Yes. It's $3.2 million. If you go to Japan, they would cut small, small cubes like this for $1,000 and you eat it. How many of us remember January 2021? Wait. Some of us might have seen this. There's a January 2021. There was a news of one boy that would never make it in life in Warri, who caught a tuna fish, and he and his friend used groundnut oil to fry it. They cannot make it in life. That fish, it was a newspaper now. That fish is valued $3.6 million. Yes, he caught it and his friends. He should just have, he's patient, he doesn't have patience. It's just carry it, snap it. Somebody from Japan will come and buy $3.6 million. Do you know what? $3.6 million dollars was about $1.7 billion. How many, his village, his life, do you know how many of us life would be different if you have just 100 million? How many 1 billion do you need in your life? You don't need more than, you don't even need up to one. If you have 1 billion naira, you don't even need to do anything. Carry that money and give it to a bank, fixed deposit, they give you 10% every year. Every year, just collect the 10%. You can live anywhere in this country. Right? So that person who eats blue tuna fish is not eating refuel. Doesn't need to refuel. Refuel is for people that need help. The person that is eating blue tuna is already fueled. His fuel is full. He needs to top up the fuel. So the point here is, your business, are you clear about who you're supposed to be talking to? And are you talking to the person you're supposed to be talking to? Right? Very, very important. Next slide, please. So I tell people that oftentimes, if every time you make a sale, it has to be a new sale, then there's a problem. Right? Because it means that you're spending too much on marketing. If you have a balanced business, it has to be because you get new clients, you get referred clients, you get repeat clients. It has to be a combination of those three, or else you're spending too much. Right? And sometimes it's because we have not invested as much as we should, because most of us, the communication with our customers go like this until they buy. When they buy, we're not talking to them anymore. Whereas we should be, because they can bring us repeat sales, and oftentimes can bring us referred sales, isn't it? Exactly. Next. Lastly, so that the business brings in enough profits, go back please, to make it worthwhile to continue operation. So the question now, let's leave it. The question now is, how profitable is your business? And this is where the rubber meets the road, right? How profitable is the business that you are doing? And this is because, see, profit is very different. Profits, or rather wealth, is measured in time, not in numbers. Because it doesn't matter how much money you have, it matters how long it takes you. For example, if your business has, say, 100 million, for example, and your burn rate, your expense is about 10 million every month. If there's no money coming in 10 months, you will need money, right? You'll probably be in trouble, right? So at this point, I like to do a test. And this test, some people have seen me do before, which is good. Next slide, please. This test is going to help you figure out whether your business is at a point where you would love it to be or not. And when we figure that out, I have just 2 questions to ask you. And after that, we would pretty much be at the end of this. I'd have just talk to you through a few things and then we'll be fine. Right? Next slide. But wait, before you go to the next slide, the problem with this activity is that most of us will not finish it. Because somewhere in between, some people are going to have like high blood pressure, stroke, all those things. But if you make it through to the end, you will have a completely life, maybe 6 months from now, guaranteed. So I'd like you to get a notepad. If you don't have one, I want you to get out your phone. A couple of things that I want you to write out. Open the notes part of your phone. If you have a notepad, it's better, and a pen is better. We're going to do a quick activity. It's going to be about 5-10 minutes. And after that, we would... Good? So this next, I want to show you how much you spend every month. And then I want to ask you if your own business can afford you. Right? Is that okay? So the next slide, something is going to come up. Don't write it. Just listen to what I'm about to say. I'll walk you through the entire process, right? Next slide. Good. So the first thing I'm going to ask is, most of us here pay rent, isn't it? Good. If you pay rent if you live in your own house, then this is zero for you. In Nigeria, if you pay rent, you oftentimes pay rent annually, isn't it? I'm not talking about your office, I'm talking about for your house now, right? So take that annual fee that you spend on rent and divide it by 12 so that we see how much is due every month. So that number that is due every month is what I want you to write. So when you write rent, write that number down. Rent, then you write, if it's 600,000 you pay every year, that's 50K, isn't it? If it's 10 million you pay every year, that's about, what's that? 600 and something, 800 and something, thereabouts. Right? And when you're done, say yes. How many of us have done that? Say yes. Yes. Good. I want you to notice as we go down the road, the yes will be reducing, because some people will have like stroke, all those things will happen, but it's fine. Next is transportation. Most of us here have your own cars. Some of us here have your own cars, and then you fuel your car maybe weekly, right? If you fuel it weekly, write the amount that you fuel weekly, multiply that by 4, that tells us how much you spend monthly. If you don't have a car, then there's usually an average budget daily that you spend on transportation, right? Whether it is for cab or for cars, multiply that average budget by 30. That tells you how much you spend on transportation every single month. So you have a daily budget, multiply that by 30, there's 30 days in the month. You have a monthly budget, multiply that. You have a weekly budget for your car, multiply that by 4, right? Good. And let me know when you're done. Say yes if you're done. Yes if you're not dead. Say yes now if you're, are you? If you're dead, say yes. Yes. Good. Next is utilities. So utilities is a bit tricky. I want you to write down the difference. So most of us here have light bill that you pay in your house, right? Now some people are online, so whether it depends on where you live, IKEDC, EDC, whatever it is. So you write that light bill that you pay. Most of us here pay some form of estate due. So you live in a gated environment, there's some estate due or some security levy that you pay, isn't it? So you write security levy you pay. Most of us here have some form of cable TV that we subscribe to. DSTV, GoTV, Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever it is, write that down, right? Most of us here fuel our generator every now and then, isn't it? Whatever that cost is, write it down. So all of that would comprise your utility bill, isn't it? Great. So, done? Are we done? Say yes. Some people have stopped though. Some people have stopped. I have not even gotten there yet. Some people have stopped. Are we done? If you're done, say yes. Yes. Good. Next is feeding. So feeding cost is not food stuff in your house. Most of us, it's for people that don't work from home. You work somewhere and you live somewhere else, and there's somewhere in the corner where you used to refuel your spirits. And it depends on what the budget is. It can be a Booker budget or Blue Tuna budget, whatever it is. There are 25 working days in the month. So if it's 800 naira that you used to refuel your spirits times 25, right? If it's Blue Tuna, $10,000 you used to be chopping every day. Only God knows how much that is, right? Exactly. So I want you to add that down. Now, if you work from home and you only eat what you cook, that's perfect. Good for you. And say yes. We have just about 20 minutes more. We'll be fine. Next is groceries. So groceries is much like, it's the big budget in the house. You're married, this is the biggest budget in your house. Food stuff, toiletries, and everything. It's a huge, now many of us might think you don't know, but just think about the last 3 months, you would find the number. So just think about it. So for most people, if you're married, if you have children, this probably would be the largest budget in your house. Probably the largest. Maybe second to school fees, perhaps. Have we done that? Say yes. Yes, yes, yes. Good. How many of us are still with me? Raise up your hand. How many of us are not with me? Thanks for your honesty. So next is school fees. So school fees is tricky. If your children are not yet in university, that means you pay school fees 3 times a year, right? Right? Good. So I need you to add all 3 terms together. When you add all 3 terms together, it gives you the total, then divide that by 12. So that tells you how much of those school fees is due every month, right? So that the school fees is not suddenly due. Or your wife suddenly gives birth. You know, that kind of thing. so add up, and then do that for each of the children, right? So because there's no buy one, get one free school yet. So this way I'm going to give up, but don't give up. Keep going. All right? Keep going, keep going, keep going. School fees. Do that for each of the children, right? And then, yes, madam, you want to ask us? No, plus you too. Like, I have a program that I'm attending, that's school fees too, isn't it? So school fees is not just for your kids, it's for you. You know, most people should have some form of a personal development plan every year. You want to say something? So I said, if you have kids, do you have kids? Okay, good. Do you do any sort of training? What's your budget for the year for some form of personal development? Whatever that budget is, divide that by 12. That's your school fees number. Right?
I said that's tricky kind of because...
No, I believe that everybody should go into every year with a budget for it. Right? And if you don't go into a year with a budget for it, you should. And let me tell you what I mean. If you don't have a budget for personal development, I would say, think about what you want to make this year and take 10% of that as a personal development budget. Personal development and marketing budget. Right? That's the safest thing to do. You know, and that's even small. People like Coca-Cola spends 30% of their revenue on marketing. It's the reason why, even where people don't know that human beings exist, Coca-Cola is there. Next is personal expenses, how much you spend on yourself. It's usually a small amount, of course, except if you belong to the Ashwebi gang, you know, turn up gang. You know, those people that every Saturday, 20K makeup, 50,000 Ashwebi, 70K turn up, you know. If you don't belong to that gang, you know, personal expense is small. So I have a small personal expense because I made the decision like 12 years ago, a no Ashwebi policy. So I have 2 white natives. One comes equipped with agbada, and the other one is normal. If you invite me to anything on the face of this earth, even my mother herself, I tell her, my mom knows. Say, don't worry, just call me your white. I'm coming. If you are very important to me, I'll enter the one with agbada and come. If we are just acquaintance, I'll enter the one with. And every 2 years, I just look at it. You know, if the white is not sharp proper again, we just renew the subscription on that white. Make another one that looks like, that's it. That's how I've helped my life to become very simple. Good. Next is childcare expense. Childcare expense is how much you spend on your child that is not school fees. So some people have children here that are not in school. There's nanny that you have for the kids, you know. So for example, we have one also. That's an expense, isn't it? And, you know, some of us here have classes like, you know, coding classes and all those things. Good. When you're done with that, next is communication. Communication here is airtime and data. If you are in this room and you can't tell what that is, there's a problem. Because it means that you buy on demand and you've messed up your life. Buy airtime once a month. You know, if you think back, you know how much you spend. I'm telling you, it will make your life much more easier when you don't have to worry about airtime or data. Right? I'm telling you, it changed my life. It doesn't matter how, you don't have to buy a lot. Just ask yourself. Some of you need to buy maybe 5,000 naira and then do whatever plan, expands it to 12,000. You know, that'll be enough for you for a year, for a month rather than doing 200 naira now, 300 naira now, 500 naira now. Before you know it, you check at the end of the month, you spend maybe that same 6, 7, 8,000 naira. But if you had a basic budget, you would, seriously, it'll help your life. How many of us have gotten to communication? Good. Next is giving. So giving is a little tricky because it's a bit irregular. So I want you to just focus on the ones that are regular. So for example, maybe like some of us give to God, some of us have statutory giving that we give to some family members, isn't it? That some of us, for example, at the end of the month, you share some to your mom, your dad, your uncle. There's one brother I know that's always asking for urgent 2K, so you keep it for when he asks, right? So you do that, right? And then lastly is other expense. What is other expense? Anything that I have not mentioned. Some of you have drivers, some of you go on vacation, some of you go on whatever it is. Right? Just figure it out and write it down. When you're done, just add it all up together. I'll give you 1 minute to add it up. Because what you're looking at is how much you spend every month. When we finish adding it up, I have just 2 questions to ask you, and then we'll be out of here. 2 questions. Are you done adding it up? How many of us have added it up, we're looking at it and we're shocked? And we just realize right now that God has been good to you. Next slide, please. So the first question I want to ask you is this. If you run a business and that business is your only source of income, at the moment, the amount that you wrote down, is that the amount of money your business pays you? Because if it doesn't pay you that amount of money, the reality is that you're stealing from your business. So the next time you go to church and the pastor says you should pray against any cankerworm and palmerworm, just keep quiet. Because you and the cankerworm are in collaboration. You know, before you go and say, cankerworm will fall down and die, and you are falling down. Please, just keep quiet. But this is not the most important question here, because this question speaks of survival. At the Strategy Factory, the question we want to help you actually answer is the next one. Next slide. Is this. How much does your business need to make to be able to pay 20 people working for you the exact amount you just wrote down right now? Because that's the real question, right? See, because if you have a business and you have anybody employed, the least that they want in their lives is what they see you have. And so when you don't design your business in such a way that if they worked hard, they could attain what you have, what would happen is that you won't keep staff for long. They would work for you until they can find something better and they will move on. And so what happens is that if you want to be successful, you need to concentrate on building a business that can represent the dream of your staff. I had a meeting with one of my clients. So I have this coaching program where I work with, top level CEOs, right? So I met one of my clients, and this client lives in Ikoyi. And so I usually have 2 meetings with them every day. So I requested specifically that this meeting happens in our house. So we get to the house, beautiful house. You get to the house on a Tuesday morning, you drive in, and it's this high-rise building. So this high-rise building in Ikoyi, about 5 floors. And then there's flat here, but maybe 5-bedroom flats, whatever it is. And then you see all the cars. You see that every house has 2 parking spaces. And you see the cars that they left, G-Wagon, Maserati, and you are wondering what they took to work, right? Good. So I get into the house, and then the first thing I asked this woman before we started the meeting was, who are your neighbors? So she said, this person works in Total, this one in Exxon Mobil, this person works in this. About 2 of them are entrepreneurs, another 2 are like, what do you call them? They work for other people, right? So we kept the conversation going. And so I did this activity, and then I asked her, I said, how big does this business need to get? Now, this business had done 3.5 billion naira that year. So I said, how big does this business need to get for you to be able to have about 20 of your staff that can live in a place like this? And then she looked at me and said, no, there's some things that you cannot achieve if you don't run your own business. I said, that's a lie. You just told me now that 2 of your neighbors work for somebody else. And that's only true, that's only possible because of 2 things. The business can afford it, and 2, they are valuable enough to the business that the business considers that putting them in a place like that is important. I said, if somebody decides today that they want to be that valuable to you, do you have a vision big enough to get them to this place? And that conversation sparked up a series of, in fact, I had to join their management meeting that morning virtually. And that business ended up that year, it's 17.4 billion naira. 3 offices in Dubai, Accra, and the UK, with Nigerians living in that place as expatriates. Yes, we think too small, most of us. So, most of us, when we think about growth in our business, the only picture we see is ours. The car you drive, the jet you drive. What I'm asking you to do now is to turn around and not just see your success, but see the success of the people who work for you. Because if you design a life that can, many of us here that want to, if Exxon Mobil say come and become our CFO, you shut down your business and go there. But Exxon Mobil was started by somebody, right? Exactly, that's the point. We watched this morning how John D. Rockefeller started his business. John D. Rockefeller owns all the major oil companies in the world now. By the time you get to part 4 of this, you realize that they did an antitrust law against him, and they made sure that he broke his oil company into 36 oil companies that he now owns. Exxon, Chevron, Shell, they belongs to him and his family members. How big a business do you want to build? Now, if you are here and you want to do that, next slide, please. It's important for you. This is where we then talk about the importance of the Strategy Factory. Now, the Strategy Factory is happening on the 27th, just across the road. And that's the conversation that we want to have with you. How can we take your small idea and how can we build that into something? All of the clients that have built billionaire businesses, in fact, 37 of them, 33 of them built a billionaire business working with us. They started out at this program that I'm talking to you about, at the Strategy Factory. For 10 to 12 hours, I'm going to be working with you guys to try and see how we can help you figure out your business and how you can build something and start the journey towards billion. And January is a good month to figure that out. Next slide, please. Usually at the Strategy Factory, we talk about a lot of things. These are quite a number of topics. Next slide. About 35 different topics and over a 10 to 12 hour period. It's long, but you won't even notice. Most people are there. I mean, at the beginning of the class, I tell them that it's going to be this long. They're like, it's impossible. And most of the time, they haven't even, they realize that time has gone and they didn't even remember. Next slide. And our sessions are usually quite fun. So it's also activity-based, making sure that we have very relevant activities that help you to drive home the point. Next. So usually, the Strategy Factory is 150,000 naira, but we want to give a 20% off to people that attend this session. Everybody else, well, people that attend this session and those that are virtual, because we're not going to announce it in the group. Anybody else that's interested would probably have to pay full price. But we only give this to people who respond quickly over the next 3 days. So what happens is, over the next 3 days, response means that you either pay all of it or part of it, so you can lock in that discount, and then you balance it up onto the program, and hopefully we'll see you in class. Next slide. And so usually what do you get? So you get all of this, you get the class, you get the opportunity. Anytime somebody attends a session, we do a one-on-one session with you afterwards. So it's not just one class. After that, we do a one-on-one session. We get into our community. For example, in this place next week, we have a large community. So a lot of people, would come here, would watch, a movie together, would connect. There's a lot of opportunities. Within the Strategy Factory community, we've facilitated people doing business with each other, at least that we don't know the other ones that have happened, but the ones that we've seen with our eyes, over 3 billion in sales have crossed hand from members to members, because we have a community that we try to promote that to happen. Next slide, please. Even those that can't make it can join virtually also, and then they would get an additional coaching session. Instead of one, they get 2, and then they're able to sort of move on from there. Next slide. I want to quickly finish up and then share with you. Okay, so those that are interested, you can take a picture of this. Even though I would send this to the class, I would send this today. Vivian will send it to the class maybe in the next. By the way, there's a lot of pictures I've been taking. We'll also send the pictures to the class, so you can take the pictures. Please tag us online when you share it. For those of us that are interested, take a picture of this. If you could do a transfer, and then next, please send a text to Vivian. So if you send a text to Vivian right now, so that she can, once you get the text, Vivian, that's Vivian. Vivian, come here, please, so they can see. She's the one that has been communicating with us. I hope she's done a good job. Yeah, very good job. Yeah. So please, if you send her a text, also see her before you leave, because she wants to take your name down and the like. So hopefully, I'm hoping that I would see you in class on the 27th, I believe. Yes, 27th, it's a Friday, where we start the class at 8:30 in the morning, and we ended at about 6:30 in the evening. In between, you would have tea break, you have lunch and the likes, but once in a while, no, in the hotel, of course, once in a while we bring in some guest facilitators. I think we're having one guest facilitator this month. We have a guest facilitator. All the guest facilitators we bring have, at the very minimum, done business of at least $1 billion. So this person started 2 businesses. He's actually coming in from the UK. So he started 2 businesses, one of which he grew to 100 million in 18 months, and the other of which he grew to 8.2 billion naira in a 3-year period. You know, he did all of that in Nigeria before he went to the UK more recently. So looking forward to seeing you in class.